Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I just want to pop in here for a second before we get started with the show and just say the Patreon is live. So if you want to go over there and hang out with us on the Patreon, building that community, that's patreon.com/conscious environment creation. So patreon.com/conscious environment creation. And over there we have promo codes for the bonfire site so you can get a little bit off on your merch, whatever you want to grab over there. But we have behind the scenes footage. You guys can vote on different topics. If you want to be the producer level, you can actually just have whatever you want me to make a podcast about within reason, and I will make it. So let's hang out together. I can't wait to keep building this community with you. All right, on with the show. Hey, welcome back to the Conscious Environment Podcast. I am very excited this week because I got a chance to talk about STEM with Dr. Carlotta Berry. Now, she is an amazing professor and she is definitely doing some stuff with the Black community with young Black girls that is absolutely amazing. So I can't wait for you to hear that story, but we got into a little bit of everything. What it means to be an engineer, what does STEM actually mean? What's the future of AI? Is it going to take over? Is Skynet on the way? Is that something that we need to worry about? I guess you're just going to have to listen to the conversation to find out our true thoughts on the future of, I guess, everything. Hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So we could just jump into it. Let's start off with introductions for podcast folks and the folks who just jumping in live. So what's your name? What do you do? And where can people find you?
Okay, my name is Carlotta Berry, and I'm a professor of electrical engineering and robotics at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, which is a very, very small school in Indiana, about an hour west of Indianapolis. It is a primarily undergraduate school in science, engineering, and math, so all of our students major in one of those areas. And you can find me on most social media at DRCABERRY. That's Twitter, TikTok, Spoutable, Mastodon, Instagram. I basically just tell people just type my name in Google and my Wikipedia page or something will come up.
It really does. It really does. I tried to do some research, and for some folks, it's a little hard to kind of find some stuff on them. But
information over,
ma'am.
Right? Well, that's what professors have to do. You know, that we have to get our name out there. That's how we get publications and get published and stuff like that. So Google
absolutely.
Right.
Yes. So I invited you on because you talk about STEM. And that is a word that gets thrown around a ton, or an acronym, I guess, that gets thrown around a ton. So STEM, and it means something. So in your explanation, what does STEM mean? Because it could mean, I've seen it on Discovery, like science kits, and I've seen it in the academic world. So if someone asks you, like I am right now, what is STEM? What would you tell them?
So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's basically anyone who has an interest in it, studies it, wants to know more about it. And actually, the latest acronym is STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We don't want to take the humanities out of STEM because it's equally as important for you to know something about the world and society as it is to study science, technology, engineering, and math. One thing I often say is scientists and engineers create the solutions to the problems of the world. So they don't work in a vacuum. So they do need to know something about the arts, about humanities. They have to be able to communicate their designs. They have to be able to talk to people and connect with people, which is why I'm always talking about breaking the stereotype that all engineers are super nerds and don't have any social skills. How great of an engineer can you be with no social skills? So the art part of STEAM is just as important as STEM.
That's I haven't ever heard that acronym before. STEAM. That's I will correct myself
right.
going forward.
They're both correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love that though, but I love adding kind of the arts into it as a soft science major. Oftentimes we people think that we butt heads a lot with the hard
No,
sciences,
so
but no, we work
I'll be honest.
together.
So my students sometimes really hate writing. They really hate their humanities courses. They really hate, I don't like calling it soft skills. I call them professional skills because there's nothing soft about it. That stuff is just as important as everything else. And I try to tell them nobody is going to want your design if you can't stand up in front of people and speak. If you can't write and help people to understand what you're talking about, nobody wants your stuff. So getting them to understand that those humanity classes are just as important as everything else they take. Sometimes it's hard with engineering students, but it is important.
So I've noticed that you have a bit of a specialty or like a focus when you talk about your STEM work on women in STEM. And that's something that I've always heard is like an issue, especially in the Black community. But women in general aren't it's involved in it as we would like to see. But I've also heard that women are the fastest demographic. So if you could speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So women, in particular, Black women, are one of the fastest growing demographics in college, even faster than Black men. The challenge is getting them in STEM and keeping them there. So I don't know how closely you follow my TikTok account, but I was in this straight up battle with this Black male engineer last week who was spouting all kind of gibberish about engineers don't care anything about your race, your demographic, your ethnicity. They're all about meritocracy. That is the way that white male engineers speak a lot in order to use coded language for not hiring more Black people and Black women and people of color, marginalized, people with disabilities, all of those kind of people into STEM. So things I was posting under his post, but that's a lie from a pit of hell. From personal experience, as well as a lot of research that you can find on the topic, a lot of women are run away from STEM before they ever even make it to college. So that whole meritocracy thing is a lie because they don't even get to college. The research shows somewhere around middle school, many young girls who are excited about science and math are run away because of a teacher or someone in class who says things like, girls just are not good at math. Black people just don't understand science. And so, you have high school counselors who steer you away from medicine or steer you away from engineering or technology because they have bought into that stereotype that Black people and women are just not good at it. So that's why I speak so much about it, because if the world is 50% women, or if most college graduates are about 50% Black women, then we need to get more parity of that in STEM. Typically in engineering, it's about 20% women, but that's not Black women, that's 20% women. Once you get down to Black people, it may be 10% Black men and maybe 5% Black women. That means that is a huge disparity. So they do a lot of research called the leaky pipeline is what they call it when they lose out on women and Black and brown people. And I'm like, it's not a leaky pipeline, because if it was just one way in and one way out, you would just tape up the pipeline. It's an obstacle course. So let's say they tape up the pipeline. There's still somebody in class telling you don't belong there. There's still some professor who's using microaggressions to describe the fact you got a C on the test and somebody else got a B. There's a lot of different pathways where you're discouraged, or you go on an internship and you're filing papers while other people are doing technical work. So there's lots of things you have to wade through in order to make it to the other end. And I like to say we want you to thrive in STEM, not just survive. So you make it to the other end, but you're bruised and beat up and you just want to be I have Black students who make it to graduation and decide, I don't even want to be an engineer no more. This was such a hard journey. I'm just going to take my degree and go and be a musician. Nothing wrong with being a musician, but they've just been so abused they don't even want to stay. So that's why I speak so much about it, because I was one of those students. I say that I survived despite of, not because of some of the things I encountered at Georgia Tech. They didn't help me get through. I crawled my way through.
Well, we're glad that you did, because here you are spreading the good word to everybody else. So I think myself included, I think a lot of folks don't really understand what an engineer is. My personal experience is a good buddy of mine is a civil engineer, and he works for the DOT in New York State. And he told me basically he designs bridges, and I believed him because that sounds true. But what are some careers that we're talking about here? Like when we say STEM or STEAM, and we're talking about learning those things, what type of careers? Because I think some folks really, maybe they have it in mind, but they think STEM is something different.
Well, let me share a nugget with you, and this is gonna flip your wig back. There are students who enroll in engineering school as freshmen who have no idea what an engineer is or what an engineer does. So what we will find is that some people select this major because mom and dad told them engineers make a lot of money, or they select this major because somebody told them that engineers were cool. And then they get there and find out it's not something they like. So the definition that I use with my students, I'm going to use with you. Engineers use math and science to design the solutions to the problems the world faces. So there are many types of engineers, and that's where we drill down into what you're interested in. You could be a mechanical engineer. I'm an electrical engineer. It sounds like your friend is probably a civil engineer because civil engineers design bridges. You could have an aerospace engineer. That's somebody who deals with obviously aeronautics or planes and things like that, or NASA. You could have I'm trying to think of some industrial engineer. There are a million branches of engineering. Then when you get into engineering, there are sub-disciplines. So although I'm an electrical engineer, under electrical engineer, I'm a controls engineer and I'm a robotics engineer. So one of the first things I always ask students when they tell me they want to be an engineer is I ask them, what do you like? Do you like to program? Then you should be a software engineer or a computer scientist. Do you like to deal with motors and gears like Legos and putting things together? Mechanical engineer, right? Bridges, you like bridges and stuff like that? Civil engineer. We also have chemical engineers. If you like chemistry in high school, you could maybe be a chemical engineer. A chemical engineer would work for like Dow or gas companies to design chemicals or petroleum, things like that. So there's lots of kind of engineers, but the one thing that connects all of us is we want to design processes and things to solve the problems of the world, to improve the world that we live in.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. That's awesome. But something that you said in there, it kind of made me think of my kid. They really like building little robots and stuff. And you said that you specialize in robotics. So can you talk about that world? Because I'm super interested in that.
Absolutely. And one of the wonderful things about robotics is multidisciplinary. So what that means is as an electrical engineer, I work with computer scientists, software engineers, mechanical engineers, sociologists, because robotics hits on all of them. The most basic definition of a robot is that it's a mechanical system, that's a mechanical engineer, that uses software, that's a software engineer or computer science, and sensors and electronics, that's an electrical engineer, in order to do tasks in the world. So if you tell me your kid does robotics, we have to really figure out what they like the most about robotics, because they could major in 4 or 5 different areas and still do robotics. My PhD is in human-robot interaction. Human-robot interaction is when you work with sociologists and psychologists to say, okay, I've now designed this robot. How can we make sure people will be able to use it? How can we make sure that people will not be afraid of the robot? For things like that, you need sociologists and psychologists, so they also do robotics.
Hi. Yeah, I'm a sociology major. This is fun. I always thought like I was out of the STEM world. They can't use me there. They build stuff all day. That's no place for me. I got to go over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with those type people all the time. We'll design a robot and, like, let's say, for example, I think about the Roomba. Those are the vacuum cleaner robots. If you put those robots on the floor and you design them, so like when your child walks by, it acts afraid, or it gets close to your child and makes them afraid, a sociologist would tell you maybe you want to use that behavior on your robot because it scares children or it intimidates people and it makes them not want to go near it, etc. So that's where a sociologist would come in, is have I designed my robot in a way that people would want to use it or run away from it?
Oh, yeah. I currently have one, and I have a 2-year-old who loves it to death because apparently this conversation worked between them. Yeah. So does this start to kind of morph a little bit into, I guess, like the ethics of it all? Because recently it's been a little bit more prevalent in the news and among the science circles and things like that, of the ethics of AI or the ethics of robotics, especially that are starting to use AI to have more functionality and be more intelligent with us. Like the Roomba that I have apparently can recognize whether or not that's a foot that it's going up to, or recognize whether or not it's a table leg. Or the biggest fear that my wife had before we even got one was that we have cats, and sometimes they throw up because they're cats. And is the Roomba gonna roll over it and then drag cat throw up or whatever all over the place? But this one in particular is, like, I guess their newest model, the i7 or something like that. And it says that, like, it's supposed to identify those things. So that's part of, like, the AI that it uses. It also maps your rooms and things like that.
That's part of the artificial.
But using AI and other manners, we've talked about, like, kind of the racial ethics or things like that as far as AI is, because unfortunately scientists have made a couple of AIs that were racist at the end of the day, because the person inputting the coding had bias when they were writing it. So is that something that's crossed your desk, I suppose?
Absolutely. And actually, I do a lot of that work through Black in Robotics. So as part of Black in Robotics, what we talk about is that some of our mission is to make sure that Black and brown people are in the room when AI and robotics are deployed, to make sure that it does not negatively impact marginalized people. So we give presentations on bias in robotics, bias in AI, as well as recommendations for that not to happen. One of the main ways we talk about that is you need to have diverse multidisciplinary teams. So in other words, if you're a team of white guys designing AI that's going to be used with Black people, that's no good. We give examples of that. One of them was on Twitter not too long ago, where they had this algorithm that took highly pixelated images and it would fix them before they were uploaded. And they all were fixed to be white male faces, including pictures of Barack Obama and other Black people. And it's because the algorithm had only been tested on white faces. Then from that, we transitioned to Joy Bulamawimi and Timnit Gebru and their work with coded bias, and how AI can be biased because human beings can be biased. And we talk about that all human beings have prejudice and unconscious bias. However, being aware of that and making sure that nothing gets tested or deployed or goes live without that being evaluated is key to that. But when you have a team of white males who go, hey, this soap dispenser looks good to me, and then it goes out into the world and you find out I can't get no soap because it doesn't recognize brown hands because of the infrared sensor on it, that it doesn't detect dark colors. Things like that just should not happen. So we give presentations about that. No matter what your area is, you need to always think about, hey, if I'm designing this technology for the world, it needs to work for all kinds of people in the world. One of the other examples we give is they used to have some chat systems, kind of like Alexa, but they did not recognize female voices and they did not recognize people with accents. So that immediately told you that there were none of those people on the engineering design team before it went live. So the main thing is make sure you are aware that there are biases and that you have checked your system to make sure that it does not discriminate against others. Another big one we've talked about is the Boston Dynamics big dogs. About a year or so ago, a police department in New York had some of those that was going around a tenement square and helping them to police, right? Well, if we have concerns already with the social justice of the police department, Black people don't want to be designing AI and robotics if they know their AI is going to be used to police their people. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I also feel like we all saw that episode of Black Mirror where those things all went super wrong.
Yeah. And they look like, and the scary part is
I was going to say that the scary thing is that the actual Boston Dynamic design looks like the robot that they had in that Black Mirror episode.
I think they may have said that Boston Dynamics helped them design the one they used in the movie or in the show, maybe, and that may be why they look so similar. But let me go ahead and give my caveat about that, because one time I was on Twitter discussing, I was interviewed by someone who said, should robots kill people? And I just so happened to mention the Boston Dynamics dog and what happened in the New York tenement and all of that. And there was an attorney from Boston Dynamics who was on the call and then emailed me at work and wanted to talk to me. So I just want to make it very clear that I'm not saying that Big Dog from Boston Dynamics kills people. I'm just saying we just need to make sure there's no bias in technology.
Right. Yes, exactly. Not a specific robot. And at all, right. We have to make sure
up in here.
I don't want the live to be taken down. Yeah. But somebody's asking a good question in the comment section. Basically, the idea is how do you mitigate the learning source once it becomes society? So at what point, once this thing goes live, because what is that AI called? Chat something or another. Yeah. So folks were trying to make it say racist things or something like that. Or this happened a couple of years ago on Twitter. I don't know if it was ever actually true or something like that, but they allowed an AI to read tweets or something like that for an extended period of time. And then it basically just became a neo-Nazi. It was really a racist thing.
AI. Yeah. And I think that you have to be comfortable in, if you're going to have your technology out in those streets like that, be able to pull it down immediately when you see that start to happen, right? Because AI can only go so far. There has to always be a human in the loop, right? Somebody in the loop that's going, okay, this is now starting to be taken advantage of, or a bunch of Nazis are injecting a bunch of racist comments in here. So I have to be able to take it down. And then you need to figure out how to use some kind of neural network, machine learning or something to detect when that kind of spam is happening and be able to detect that and take it down, right? This stuff is not foolproof yet. Chat GPT, I have some posts on my TikTok about that. When I gave it some of my engineering problems, it was getting the answers completely wrong. And so you have all these professors on TikTok and on Twitter pulling their hair out going, oh my God, students are going to be cheating now. And I'm like, they were already, the ones who were going to cheat were already cheating. They were using Chegg and all these and solution manuals to cheat. So basically you got to start giving them more assignments that require some nuance in thinking, right? Because I went in and gave that thing some problems and it was just straight up wrong. And if you copy that and turn it in, you're going to get an F. So I just think as professors, we have to always be aware that the students are going to cheat. Where there's a will, there's a way. They're going to always do that. But you have to make sure you're asking things that are not going to be so easily answered by basically something that is a neural network that is searching the internet. So if somebody, one thing I found that it does really well is it writes computer code really well. I'm actually going to be on a panel in about a month where I discuss this. And I said, well, one way you could do that is have students comment their code. So let's say they do get it from Chat GPT. You don't get full credit until you go through every line of code and comment and explain to me how it works. And if they got that from an AI, they're not going to be able to tell you that.
Yeah. Wow. That's a way to kind of get around folks cheating and things like that. And I think...
Yeah, it's not going away.
Right, exactly. I think a lot of people are just kind of worried about this sort of Skynet kind of thing. Like the AI will become self-aware. Once it's out there, it's unstoppable at some point. But I hadn't even considered the fact that maybe they should have just taken it down. Maybe just pull the plug, stop it. This thing has gotten out of control.
Right? That's what engineers do. They test, they troubleshoot, they evaluate, and they iterate until it works. So if you find out it's not working, you pull it down, you iterate, you change your software, you modify until you get it to a point. I don't know if we're ever going to get to the Skynet level of things, because even as an engineer, I don't 100% ever trust technology. But being that I live an hour from work, I am looking forward to finally having an autonomous vehicle that can drive so I don't have to pay attention. That is not the Tesla, by the way. I wouldn't trust that. But, I'm looking forward to getting there. But I think you always need to have a healthy, fear or cynicism when it comes to technology. I'm never going to blindly trust anything because people create things and people can be biased and people are not foolproof.
Exactly. Like we're a Amazon Alexa house. We have one on every level. My kids love music. They love talking to it and asking it stuff, and it plays music and it does whatever. But every once in a while, I have to go into the settings and erase all the voice recordings.
Oh, absolutely.
It will mess up. It's like learning of our voices for about a day or so. Like it'll start to get things wrong for a second, but then it picks it back up pretty quick. But yeah, there's tons of when it thinks it heard the wake word, it will start recording. But that's the kind of secret of it, is that they're literally always listening so that they could hear the wake word. It always has to be something is listening at that point. And it does save those few second recordings when you say its name and it starts to pay attention. So that's my healthy, makes me feel a little bit better about, the NSA that's in the house that I allow to be here because of course.
I'm gonna tell
so you
I
asked
don't have an Alexa in my house. And one of the reasons is because I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember this, where somehow the recording of some man's home had been leaked. And after listening to it, they could tell who his girlfriend was, who he lived with, what he did, what time he got up, what time he went to bed. And I was like, you know what? That's kind of a lot. So I've honestly never had an Alexa. No offense to those who do, but that's one of those things. I still have that healthy cynicism of, although I will tell you, you do know your phone's always listening as well. Have you ever been talking to a friend and then all of a sudden you go to YouTube or you go to Google and something you mentioned to a friend is now the next suggested thing? So even if you don't have an Alexa, I think your cell phone is sometimes listening to you as well.
Yeah, all the time. Actually, the other night, me and my wife were sitting down, we're watching a movie, and we're talking about the actor, but we couldn't think of the person's name, like for the life of us. So we're saying like, yeah, I think he was in this movie and he was in this movie, and we're saying the names of the movies that that this actor was in. And I was like, this is gonna drive me crazy. I gotta look it up. So I go to look at my phone and I said, who's the actor in? And it finished the thought was just another movie that I knew that this actor was in, and then said their name. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's because my phone was just listening to us have this conversation. It was like, we know what you're going to type into the phone right now. So here you go. Have fun.
Give the phone permission, but it just does it, right?
Yes. I guess somewhere probably in our updates or something, we've signed our life away on some checkmark box at some point. But you asked earlier if I had seen some of your content, and I have. And there's one word that you use that I would love for you to explain that's unique to your content. So I'm going to try to say it correctly. Noir stemicist. Noir stemicist. You have to say the word. I think I'm saying it wrong.
So the word is STEMinist. STEMinist is a merging of feminist and someone who promotes STEM. So basically a STEMinist is a woman who promotes women in STEM. And so Noir STEMinist was my take on that, because I wanted to say that I equally support getting more Black people in STEM as I do women in STEM. So the Noir is French for Black. So I married that with STEMinist. But STEMinist actually was not my word. That actually already exists. And it was a play on feminist, but women who do STEM. And the main reason I created the word originally was because whenever I was on Twitter, I would look for things that I had said, and it was so hard for me to find my content sometimes. So I started using that hashtag on everything that I wrote, because then I knew if I ever did a search on Noir STEMinist, my things would come up. And then it became my business, because during the pandemic, I started a business because I started getting asked to do a lot of speaking, a lot of tours, a lot of workshops, a lot of selling robot kits and all of that. So Noir STEMinist then morphed into a business because it became unsustainable pretty quickly when we were all home during the pandemic and everyone now had access to you that they would not have before. It became as easy as a click of a button for people to say, well, why can't you give a Zoom presentation on this? Okay, well, it's only so much free labor a sister could do. So Noir STEMinist became my business, and that's why I now put it on everything. But I originally just had it as a word that I used to be able to find things, because I knew if I went in Google and typed Noir STEMinist, my things would come up no matter where they were.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that so much. So, contact to you for speaking engagements or workshops, or you have a book out. Am I?
I do. I actually just finished book 2. It's with the editor, but I started this with a couple of my colleagues that I started Black in Engineering with. We're all Black women engineering professors. We are extremely rare. There's only about 200 or so in the United States. So we're definitely unicorns. But one thing we talked about is engineering has a marketing problem. Engineers are not just MacGyver, Dilbert, and Sheldon. And one way we thought that we could actually help with that is we could either have a web series, a YouTube series, television shows, movies, etc. So our idea was, let's start with books. And so we started with Black STEM books about Black women, and the ones I write are Black STEM romance novels. So it's not an overly technical book, but every main character is going to be somehow related to STEM. So the one I just finished, she's a nurse. That's the science part of STEM. The one that is currently available, she is a graduate student studying robotics and getting a computer science degree. So we want to normalize seeing Black women in STEM just going through the day, dating, falling in love, being hurt, dealing with family drama, all the things Black people do, but also doing STEM, because this is another way to get more mentors and role models in front of young people, as well as not so young people, to say, hey, I could do that. That could be me.
That's amazing. See, and that's bringing back, like you said, STEAM. So science, technology,
that's the art, right?
engineering, arts, and mathematics. That's the art section. I love that so much. Yeah, that's amazing, because one of the things that we do talk about on this show quite often, when we kind of get to the portion of actionable items or things to do, a lot of what I tell people or advise them to do is seek out the group that you're trying to advocate for or help or bring attention to or uplift, and find their content, because there's always somebody making that kind of content. It's pretty easy here on TikTok to even just type in the search bar something about whatever you're looking for, and there'll be thousands of videos of people that do this thing and they're talking about it. And to consume that content over and over again, so it becomes normalized in your everyday life. So seeing a Black woman in STEM isn't going to be so jarring to you, and you may not do something like question their ability, which I kind of wanted you to.
One of the things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to speak on that. Being unicorns in the field, as you said, and we understand, the elevation of white voices over Black voices a lot because of white supremacy and society. So it's much easier for white male voices specifically, I guess, in kind of these fields to be elevated. As Black women, what is your experience with being denied, I guess, the benefit of the doubt or the assumption of correctness, intelligence in that field?
One of the hardest challenges is, before I became a professor, I worked as an engineer at Ford Motor Company in Detroit, Michigan. It's an automobile company. And it's so funny because there's one guy on TikTok who was talking about how racist Henry Ford was. And I was like, oh my God, if only I had known that when I worked there, it would have made everything that I experienced make sense. But a lot of what you end up experiencing, and I tell people this all the time, I don't know if it's racism, sexism, ageism, and I don't know if it really matters. It doesn't really matter what ism is. All it means is that I'm trying to be diminished, right? And so what I found is that a lot of times the biggest challenge is bringing your whole self to work. Because when I walk in the room, I don't just walk in the room as an engineer. I walk in the room as a Black woman, as a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as a daughter, etc. And I'm going to bring all my experiences to the fore. But what you quickly find out is they only want you there for your technical skills. They don't want those other things. And if you start to share those other parts of yourself, which is what I found when I worked at Ford, you become presumed incompetent. Right. So when I shared with colleagues that I'm working as an engineer, I'm trying to pay off my student loans like everybody else, but I'm going to eventually go get my PhD. What I found out is that they were going back to my boss saying she wants to be a school teacher. She don't even really want to be here. What makes you think I can't do my job because I said I'm going to eventually become a college professor? So it's those kind of things where they question your ability. Also, I had colleagues tell me, because this is when I was like 25 years old, you're too young. You're too young to be able to tell me what to do. I've been an electrician 20 years. Why would I listen to a kid who's 5 years out of school? Well, I'm an engineer. You're the electrician. You're supposed to be doing what I'm asking you to do. So dealing with a lot of things like that, microaggressions, like I said, the unconscious bias, it continues. It even continued once I started working. I worked at a HBCU, and then I work at currently a predominantly white institution. So even being the role model and mentor to some white male students who've never seen a Black person or a Black woman who wasn't a service worker, who didn't work at McDonald's, or who was not the custodian, was a challenge for them. So when I first, questioning your ability, questioning your credentials, are you really qualified to teach me? Are you telling me correct things or questioning it? Okay, you have no degrees yet, but I have 4, but you're over here asking me if I'm teaching you correctly. So those are the kind of things that women, as well as Black people, will experience because they're not used to seeing people like you. So something must be wrong. It's like a mental, it's a disconnect. So I have to try to make this make sense in my mind. And the way that I do that is, you're not qualified to have this job. You're a double minority, and that's why they hired you.
Ooh, yes. Yes. A lot of people who talk about affirmative action as just a talking point. No real education or knowledge surrounding it.
Means,
no real.
None of that.
Right.
And I get a lot of that.
Yeah. No realization
I get a lot of that on TikTok and Twitter. And I think, if you check out my timeline on any day, somebody will be talking about affirmative action. Someone will be talking about STEM as a meritocracy. And I tell them in a minute, I don't care whether I got into school or got my job because affirmative action or not, because affirmative action may have opened the door, but it sure won't keep me there. And I tell you, after 20 years, I know what I'm doing. So I'm never going to deny whether I got anywhere because of affirmative action or not. I know everywhere I am now, I'm qualified to be. So welcome. Thank you. But yeah, I get a lot of that. I get a lot of troll behavior from white males, particularly on TikTok and Twitter. And as soon as they see doctor, as soon as they see STEM, they try to come for me. That's the main thing they like to do, is talk about you're there because of affirmative action, and some poor Asian kid didn't get an opportunity because of you. And I like to tell them, in STEM, Asian students are not considered underrepresented minorities or marginalized. Asian students are probably second most prevalent after white. So in STEM, minoritized and marginalized, it would be, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, indigenous people, Black people, brown people. So you cannot say affirmative action, you're hurting Asian people, because there's a lot of Asian people in STEM.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And not to mention that affirmative action historically has benefited white women the most. Once we were once we allowed women to participate in it, because that's another thing women were not allowed to.
Molly is saying that in the comments. Another thing that I talk a lot about is that there are not a lot of white women in engineering either, but there's more than Black women. And a lot of times when you see support programs like Society of Women Engineers, they'll be predominantly white. And I like to say, we're not cookie cutters. The needs of me as a Black woman are not going to completely align with a white woman, right? The needs of a Black man are not going to completely align with the needs of a Black woman. So one thing they have to do is to disaggregate our experiences. Yes, some things will be similar, but some things will not. And it becomes very frustrating when they just try to lump you in there and go, well, you should be good because we have this program for white women. No, it's not the same. Because what I have noticed is that a colleague, mostly white men, will see a white woman as their sister, their aunt, their mother, their daughter, and they will sometimes get the benefit of the doubt that I will not. My boss, when I worked at Ford, because I was 25 and his daughter was 25, the thing he used to love to say to me all the time is, you remind me so much of my daughter, and she has no purpose or vision in life, and you're just like her. Don't be equating me to your white female daughter that I don't even know, right? So that's what I'm saying. Our experiences are totally different. Don't do that.
Yeah, that one's wild. But you are a professor, so you deal with students. I'm not going to say children, but just to circle back to something. But to circle back to a point that you made a little bit earlier, is that it seems as though it's about middle school, where especially Black girls start to fall off. in STEM work. So do you have any recommendations or like resources for parents that want their kids to stay interested in that thing? Because I don't know if we're ever going to solve the problem of school allowing them to still be interested. And so I think some of it's going to fall back on the parents. But as an educator in higher education, is there any tips or tricks for parents out there that are like, I want my kid to still enjoy this. They loved it when they were 9 and now they're 13. It seems like they don't like it anymore.
Well, let me just, first of all, give the caveat to my advice. I have a freshman in high school. She has been doing STEM since she was about 3. She's been coding. She can program. She can build robots. She can do all of that. And during the pandemic, when she was home all that time, she quit piano. She quit the robotics team, and she decided she wanted to be an artist. I'm still holding out hope that she will come back and integrate her now love of art back to STEM because she's very good at it. She's very good at math, science, and all of that. But now she wants to be an artist. So I will say I can give some advice, but ultimately your kid's going to do what your kid wants to do. So I will say I also gave up on the schools for other reasons. And I had a friend who is a high paid tutor in LA. So she's a tutor to the stars, Denzel Washington kids, stuff like that. And what she told me when I told her I was having challenges is she said, you're just going to have to supplement. You cannot depend on the school with the overworked, underpaid teachers with 30 kids in the classroom to do it all. You're going to have to supplement. So some suggestions for supplementing: Black Girls Code, Black Boys Code. These are organizations that you can join. Some of them are virtual and online. Code.org, vexvr.com. These are websites you can go to. Some are totally free, and they have little activities your kid can do to program robots, virtual. Black in Robotics has summer workshop series where we do Zoom workshops with kids and show them how to program in these free websites. And we also have workshops where we ship robots to kids and then they build them in Zoom with us. So for example, here's one of my robots. So what we would do is we ship things to them in parts, and then we get on Zoom with them and talk them through how to put it together and how to program it to drive around or to avoid obstacles, et cetera, like that. So I would look at programs like that. Boys and Girls Club has after-school programs that do STEM. Girl Scouts, which my daughter is in, and Boy Scouts, STEM Scouts, all have STEM programs as well. There are also robotics teams at a lot of organizations like First Lego League, Vex Robotics, First Robotics. I was a judge and a lead mentor for some of these organizations. So what I would say is get your kid in some kind of summer program to keep being excited about something that they love, so that even if they start to get turned off at school, when they're around like-minded people and mentors and role models, they can keep flourishing in that love. Once they get to high school, I know my daughter's high school has a robotics team, and they have other technical things like Project Lead the Way that they can join. I have on my website, noirstemminist.com, because I get asked this question so often. I have blog posts and links where I give some of the recommendations for things you can do with kids to keep nourishing their excitement in STEM.
Awesome. Just a quick question on a definition, because there are a couple of people in the comments who are talking a little over their head.
I'm sorry.
What is? No. It's fine. What is coding?
Okay.
So you said that there's different classes or Black Girls Code, Black Boys Code. What is coding?
No, I understand. So I had mentioned earlier that when you have a robot hits on a lot of different disciplines. So a robot, in order to be intelligent, you have to write software. So a robot brain, basically a brain is whatever the little computer is on your robot that has to make it do something. My robot can't do anything if I don't write a computer program for it to be able to do it. A computer program is like a language, just like Spanish is a language. A computer program is a special language that tells the robot brain what to do. So in other words, if I want my robot to drive forward, I have to write a program to say, you need to make the wheels turn. That's called coding. So programming and coding is basically the same thing. It's the software that you write to make your robot do something. If you go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com, Carlotta Berry, I have examples of writing code in a graphical way, which looks like puzzle pieces, as well as with text to explain how to program a robot. So those are other things that you would learn by going to the websites. There's other websites too, like MIT has a Scratch website. So if you've never written any kind of program before or code before, these websites will walk you through very simply how to write something to make a robot move or to print words on your computer screen, etc. So even though you've never programmed before, your computer has program running in the background. So it's code. So it's called coding.
All right. Yeah. So everything that you do, and I guess we're just sort of used to the simpler side of.
But yes, that's what it's doing. Yeah.
I feel like there's a couple of year gap generation that we all had MySpace accounts and we all just did like simple HTML stuff to make it like make the background turn green and have a music player and have a video start. And I kind of miss when social media was like you had to learn basic HTML to do any of it.
That was programming. That was programming in HTML. I'll be honest, I never had a MySpace page, but I did have to write HTML code to make my first website. So yes, that's programming. It's just programming in HTML, but you can program in a lot of different languages, Python, C, ROS, there's lots, but yes, that's exactly what you were doing.
Do you have, as far as the languages go, I've seen those words thrown around and to be honest, have literally no idea what they mean. But is there one that I guess for kids or it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be kids. I have no idea. So is there one that's easier than the other ones or are they all kind of the same or is there one that you prefer to start someone with?
Yeah. No, they're not all the same. So I think for kids and actually for even college students who are entry level and never programmed in high school, Python is normally the entry level point. For elementary, middle school, it's typically graphical programming, which is probably Blockly or Scratch. Like I said, there's examples of these on my YouTube channel and on my TikTok page if you want to take a look. Then as you become more advanced, you may go from Python to C or to Java. Some high school kids learn Java in high school. And then the ones that I use on these robots that I try to say are flexible for a lot of different levels is called Arduino Sketch. Arduino Sketch is like C programming.
Like C. Is C denoted by it's like C++? Am I making that up?
No, that you're right. There's C, there's C++, there's C++, there's Visual C++. So all of those have different kinds of ways of handling objects and the way you program. It changes the syntax, etc. But C is the basic. But then it was C++, C++, Visual C++, all those kind of things. And I think somebody's writing about that in the chat too. Yeah, there's levels, right? So you want to start at a most basic level and then build on that. But I think if you're starting at the very entry level, I would start with graphical programming just to get the algorithmic experience of what does it mean to assign a variable, to use a if condition, if I push this button, this light turns on, that kind of thing. And then move from there to just Python or something else a little bit more complicated.
Do you remember or have you ever heard of an app called If This Then That?
No.
It was I used to love it and I thought I was so cool. It was an online app. It lived completely in the cloud, but what you could do is you could create an account and you could set up different devices or certain things. You could each one of your, like if you had Hue lights or something like that, or your Amazon system, or even like if you have like a Schlage electronic lock or something like that, you could put all of those things together, or just functions on your cell phone. So if you took a picture on your cell phone, you could do and then you put the first command in. So if I take a picture, then I will automatically email that picture to myself.
Yeah.
So like if this, then that. And that
you were programming. Yeah. That's programming.
Yay.
That's called a if condition. That's what you were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot. I think this is more prevalent than I guess people think, and STEM is not so big and scary, which was kind of
No. You
the
were
point of
doing it.
me.
You just didn't know you were doing it, right?
I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought I was so cool. Like it was if the one that we always that my kid loved when she was littler is. Because we had the hue lights and they would change colors and stuff like that. If the National Weather Service reported or changed the report to active rain, it would turn all of the lights purple.
So you
And then they would know
yeah.
that it was raining, and because purple rain.
Oh, that's cute.
And they loved that, but it also helped when my kid was little for bedtime. At 9 o'clock, the lights would flash 3 times, and they knew that it was bedtime. But I would just go on this little website and I guess program all of this stuff to have my smart home devices all work with each other.
You were programmed.
My daughter also has a game, and I wonder if this is kind of the visual, I guess, visual coding that you're talking about. My daughter has a game called, I think it's. I wish my wife was in here. She would remember. I think it's Robot Turtles or something like that.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's a little map, and you're supposed to get your turtle from one corner to the other corner, and you get a bunch of cards, and the cards are all just directions. So, it's straight forward, or you could make it turn to the left or turn to the right or something like that. And you would have to pick up cards and then put cards down. But as you put the cards down, you allowed your turtle to move. So your turtle could only move if you put a card down that reflected the direction that it was supposed to go. So if you wanted it to go straight, you would have to put down 7 straight cards, and then it would keep going in a straight line. If you wanted it to turn left, so on and so forth. So I guess physical games or things like that, is that kind of in the same world? Do you think those translate well to like a computer setting?
That is entry-level algorithmic programming. That's how they teach small children how to program. Because programming is all about that, learning a systematic approach to solving a problem. So understanding that the turtle has to get to the northeast corner of the board, it has to go straight 7 steps, turn right 90 degrees, and then go straight 5 steps. That's how you teach small children how to program. So your daughter was at an entry level of programming. She was learning the algorithms for how to get from one point to the other. And when you're teaching students how to program, they make flow charts and pseudocode, which is basically you write out in words what you want the program to do. So that's what your daughter was doing. Yeah. So games like that are getting their mind ready to think like a programmer.
Awesome. Yeah. And there's tons of those all over the place. I guess I see them kind of all the time. I've seen them with little cars, essentially the same process, just moving item A from point A to point B somewhere, and I don't know. I guess they're making little Roombas or something, right?
There was one that's the next level up from the cards. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a children's robot where you press on top of it instead of the card, like you would press the forward 7 times and you press the right arrow, then you press go, and the robot would move however the buttons on top of the robot were pressed. So that would be another example of that as well, where you're giving it commands like move forward, turn, move forward, and then a kid would see how the robot actually executes what they said, and that's basically executing the computer programming.
That's awesome. Do you know any others off the top of your head? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but in sort of that
one for kids, it's called Sphero, Sphero. It's a robot that looks like a ball. My daughter, when she was younger, the Microsoft store and the Google store at the mall would give Sphero workshops. Another one that's really popular with kids that I understand is similar to programming, but I've never done it, is Minecraft, where they go in and build worlds. So that also is teaching them some systematic thinking for how to build a world or a fort or whatever. So, although we like to say we don't want them on screens all the time, there is a lot of benefit. There are a lot of problem solving games that are on iPads, and like Minecraft, and Roblox is another really popular one as well. So some of that also teaches some of those skill sets.
Yeah. Me and my wife were just kind of talking about this the other day. The way that children are starting to interact with technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had the benefit of watching like two sections of I guess Gen Alpha grow up with things like my eldest kid. Everything they would try to touch. They would try to touch everything to get it to do something. So kind of that learning of I have to do this in order for that to do that. So it was always like kind of touch with things because they figured out that my laptop was a touch screen in all of that. But my youngest child, who's 2, talks to everything. Because she's learned that the Alexa will talk back to you, and so like it's a lot of verbal kind of commands, but also but kind of that same idea. I know Minecraft is I've heard kids basically say like it's Legos inside of your computer. So yeah, so kind of like a combination, I guess, of I don't know, thinking like a mechanical engineer. Yeah, because there's different materials that you have that are harder or weaker that will stand up to so much pressure and things like that in Minecraft. It's pretty nuanced when you get to like kind of the higher levels of that, and those are, I guess, things that people have to think about.
Yeah. I will say one thing, whether they're doing it with text, with touch, with speaking, is you want to get to the point where you make your child as much of a creator of technology as a consumer of technology. So if they like playing on their iPad, if they like playing on the computer, try to find them some games where they are creating, whether it's Minecraft, Roblox, code.org, wherever it is, so that they're not just being a passive interactor with something, but something where they have to engage their mind to problem solve, to figure out how to get the turtle from here to there, whatever. But you want to get them to that point because that's what elevates. Just passively playing video games all the time is not all that great. But if you're now in a video game where you have to build a world or build a school or make a fortress or figure out what product to use, you're using that other side of your mind as well. Somebody's throwback to Lotus from the 80s, getting your turtle to move. Oh, yeah. So finding, some of those things so that you're a creator, not just a consumer. And they can do that away from the computer screen as well. My daughter, as much of a video game head as she is, she also likes just drawing with her hands just as much. Things that let you use both sides of your brain. Sewing. Yeah,
exactly.
Creative hobbies. Legos are big. Legos are always big. Cross stitching was a big one when I was little, but just those things that you're using both sides of your brain.
My daughter loves Legos. She loves, because she's little, she loves Mega Blocks and stacking and building as much as she can, as high as she can, and then she knocks it down, and then she says, "Oh no!" and then she wants to build it back up again. I do believe that my wife jumped into the chat, so I hope that she could confirm whether or not that game that we said earlier is Robot Turtles. But I think it's something like Turtle Robot or Robot Turtle, something like that.
Which one is she?
I thought How's Happening. Thoughts on magnet tiles.
How's
seem to be the new thing.
Yes. My daughter has some of those. The triangles that are magnetic. She used to love those things. Those are great. Just make sure they're safe, because some of them you got to make sure it's the kind where the magnets don't fall out, because a lot of those got recalled for kids swallowing them. But my daughter had some. They were called magnetometers. And you could put them together and make like a geodesic dome, and you could make like houses and towers. They were very similar to Legos, except they were these triangles that were magnetic. I can't remember what they called, but they also are not cheap. Those things were expensive, but she loved playing with those things. You're gonna make me look it up. What were they called? Magnetic.
Yeah. We have a bunch of them on the fridge right now, and whenever we're getting kind of anything, we sort of try to think about it like this. We don't love the just screen time for the sake of screen time.
Yeah,
They
no, I
try to have
absolutely
everything be some kind of learning type
Oh, it
thing.
looks like they have a lot of different iterations of it now. But yeah, mag formers. That's what they were called. They were mag formers. But yeah, they're like
Mag formers.
these triangles with magnets in them, and then you put them together. Oh, she loved those things. Because a lot of times when she was small, she wanted to play hide and seek. Okay, I can't do with so much hide and seek, but I could sit and play with that, like the Legos and the little magnetic stuff. I could play with that all day with her. I love that stuff.
Yes, Robot Turtles, awesome game that kids can grow with. It teaches operations.
It does.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. Is there was 3 different levels of the game that had more and more complicated commands to do in different places for you to try to get your turtle to like this big I don't know, like 12 by 12 kind of square board. It looked like a checkerboard kind of thing, but each corner you would set up and you would have a different color turtle, and they had to perform some sort of task. So some of them would be like get from A to B, but some were get to A and then turn around and then get back, or something like that. So one of the things that we do like to do on this show, like I was saying earlier, is kind of have actionable items. And a lot of folks who are, listening, especially in the Black community, they want to know how to support how to support educators, or how to support folks like yourself that are trying to bring STEM to our community and really let it flourish. So are there any resources or anything, or I guess, what would your suggestion to someone that's like, I want to get into this, or my kid loves Legos and I think that they're into this, but I'm not really sure. What would, I guess, next steps be? Your 2-year-old loves Legos. What do you do?
At a most basic level, if you don't have anything in your home, take them to your public library. One thing we used to do with my daughter on the weekends, if you take her to the children's room at a library, they typically have STEM-based toys there. They had Legos there. So keep that kid's interest going. And then if you have a computer, take them to some of those websites I suggested, like vr.vex.com, code.org. They all have free activities. So if you go to them, they have learning activities. Like if your kid is 8, go here and it'll show you how to put puzzle pieces together. And the reason I really like that vr.vex.com website is because whatever the kid programs, there's actually a little robot, and when you push play, you see the robot actually do it. Kind of like you were mentioning for the turtle, except now they're writing the program. And so there's different ones in there. There's one where you can make the robot drive a certain set of numbers. There's one where you can make the robot draw pictures, thinking about the arts. And it's all free, right? So take an afternoon to sit with your kiddo and just go through that website and do some of those learning activities.
That's and
if you're not
great
so young
ideas
and want to learn some of this stuff, you can go to my YouTube channel. But I actually have some content for kiddos as well. But sometimes the Black in Robotics workshops, we encourage a parent to come with the kiddo, because sometimes it may be, you may have to do need a screwdriver and things like that. So the child may not have that kind of hand-eye coordination yet. So a lot of times if they're younger, we'll ask that parents come to those workshops with them and help out.
Yeah, and you were saying that there's 2 groups that you founded or co-founded. It's Black in Robotics and Black in Engineering, or say those again.
Yeah, it's Black in Robotics and it's Black in Engineering. It's blackinengineering.org, blackinrobotics.org. And they actually were formed during the Black in X movement. So the Black in X movement exploded on Twitter around the time that George Floyd was killed. At the time, there was only Black in STEM, which was very active on Twitter. And a lot of the members of the community in academics were like, we need to do something to speak out. And because, there's a lot of bias in STEM, like we've talked about today. So we wanted to come together as a community because we're unicorns, we're isolated, we're all over the world. And sometimes you may be the only one, like I'm the only Black woman professor on my campus. So by making these organizations, we're able to come together and support each other. So if you go to like blackinx.org, it lists all of them. There's Black in Psychology, Black in Astro, Black in Micro, Black in Cancer, Black in you name it. But it's just a way for all these people who do these unique things in STEM and even some non-STEM areas to come together and speak with one clear voice and support each other. So Black in Robotics, I talked to you a little bit about already. It's about addressing bias in robotics and having Black people in the room when AI and robotics are designed. Black in Engineering is about supporting engineering academics, and we have a call to action on creating an anti-racist institution and things that you can do to be more inclusive to Black faculty, staff, and students. And then just recently, unfortunately, there were 2 Black graduate students in Black and Chem who committed suicide in the last couple of weeks. So now there are members of the Black and X community who are calling for more mental health checks with Black academics in these areas. So Black in Engineering is trying to organize a way for them to check in, because graduate school is not an easy journey. And we should not be losing people who've made it all the way that far and then decide that they just can't go any further without having supports in place for them.
Right. Yeah. We shouldn't be losing anyone. And I feel as though this is where our two worlds kind of connect. And I'm glad to speak with you and realize, I guess it's not that it was something that I didn't know about before, but how integrated sociology, anthropology, and all those things can be into STEM, because, you know, the anti-racist page, there's a lot of sociologists, there's a lot of anthropologists that watch and listen and, you know, have a technical conversation. Sometimes they're kind of like, oh, well, you know, this might not be for me. Interesting, but I might not have a place for it. But kind of here to tell you that, yes, sociologists are very needed. Psychologists are very needed, because engineers are making stuff for humans.
And we see what happens when they're not involved. So every time I have a third rail on my TikTok page, it's because of something like this. So the other third rail on my TikTok page, this one is pinned to the top, was when this young lady at some school in California said social justice was not needed in STEM. And I had to go and correct her and go, sweetie, there's no such thing as STEM without social justice. Because if I'm not talking about eliminating bias and having racial equity in STEM, then I'm not doing my job right. I'm not a robot. I'm still a human being. So anything that I do in STEM, social justice has to be a part of that. And the fact that you're saying that means you don't understand what STEM is. Because in the same sentence that she said social justice isn't needed in STEM, she said she wanted to start a program to get more girls into STEM. Baby, what do you think social justice is? So absolutely, sociology and anthropology and all of those are needed in STEM, because you don't STEM in a vacuum. I don't design in a vacuum. I don't create in a vacuum. I do it for and with people. And if you're trying not to do that, you're doing it wrong. And that's the other third rail that I was talking about last week, about the guy talking about, it's about meritocracy. Engineers are just a bunch of nerds and they don't care as long as you can do your job. Well, I can tell you right now, that's a lie from the pit of hell, because I teach white males who are super nerds, and they still, some of them, say really out of the pocket things to women. And if it really was about all I care about is you could do your job, I don't care what your background, then they wouldn't be saying things to female students like, I don't know why you're here.
Ugh.
Right.
Oh, that just grossed me out. Yeah. The thing I think is very interesting about this is kind of my favorite thing to let people know when they talk about meritocracy or something like that, because I kind of looked into this because I was super interested in where this phrasing came from. Yeah. But the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? We hear this all the time. Yeah. It started off as a comic in a German satire paper, like kind of this funny sort of newspaper. And it came from this idea that pulling oneself up by their bootstraps is impossible. And the allegory that they used then was a man was riding a horse on his way to town, and they got stuck in mud, and using his own strength, he pulled straight up on his hair and was able to pull himself out of the mud. And then there was an American paper that caught on to this kind of funny thing and talked about how basically lampooning meritocracy and saying that it's as useful as a man that tries to leap over a fence by pulling straight up on his bootstraps and carrying himself over. Yeah. And that was the punchline, was that it's impossible. But somewhere along the lines, we've turned that into like
I completely agree. And
the rules.
It's normally white men who use these things when they talk to me. But this is another one I tell them. I said, what I mentioned to you earlier about the affirmative action. I don't care whether I got in this position or not by affirmative action, because guess what? Having a person of color or a woman in that room with a bunch of white male engineers does not just benefit me, it benefits them, because it requires them to learn how to speak to someone who is different from them, has a different background from them, maybe grew up in a different economic situation than them. And all of that makes them a better engineer, just like it makes me a better engineer. So I don't care that we all didn't make it in this room the same way. You're getting some benefit from me being here, just like I get some benefit from being here. And I tell you what, you can talk all you want about all the reasons I got in that room, but I tell you what, my mom sure did not PowerPoint my face onto the crew captain boat to get there, and my uncle didn't donate to the library to get me there. So sometimes some people got in that room and it wasn't just because they deserved to be either. But we don't talk about that. Right. We don't talk about all the kids with the fake tennis scores and the coach who said they were great as the cheer captain. They weren't on the cheer team in high school. So if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it all. Let's talk about varsity blues and all of that as well, because that still goes on, too. Somebody picked up a phone and made a phone call and said, can little Sally come to your school right now? She didn't get in anywhere else.
Exactly. You're not wrong at all. Yeah, that happens. That happens way too much. It happens in every field, in every room, where people don't feel as though Black and brown people deserve to be there, where people don't feel that women don't deserve to be there, and doubly, people don't feel like Black women should be there at all. And one thing I want to hear from you one more time. I know you said it a little bit earlier, but I want to hammer this home. So you do with I think you were saying that it was Black in Robotics.
Yes.
You have workshops and classes and things online, and there's one where you send out the parts for the thing. Can you talk about that one more time?
So Black in Robotics is a summer workshop series. I'm actually the undergraduate outreach lead for Black in Robotics. So I'm in charge of basically designing those summer activities. And some of them will be, we will log on with elementary kids. We'll go to a website and teach them how to program. Then there's some for more the middle school age, 5th grade and higher. So even some young adults or even older adults who want to learn STEM. A lot of our workshops are sponsored by Amazon Robotics, by Google, by Toyota Research Institute, and several other companies. So they will supplement us designing a kit or building a kit and shipping it out. So let's say, for example, a couple of summers ago, we bought kits online from Amazon that were $90. And if you paid like $20 to do the workshop, you got the kit as part of it. So it was supplemented by the company, but it comes in parts. So then you log into a Zoom classroom with us, and it'll be like maybe me and 5 other members, and we'll go into breakout rooms and we'll walk you through how to build your robot and get it moving. So typically I will start posting those around June, and we'll do the workshops from June to August because I'm so busy during the school year that we only typically do those in the summertime. But they're normally on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours. You sign up maybe a month or so in advance so we have time to ship the things out to you, and then you log on and we help you with it.
Awesome. That's amazing. I will definitely tell my kid about it, and I'm sure they're going to think it's amazing and probably want to do it, because they're currently with my father-in-law building a robot right now, and I think it moves. It's got eyes and arms and and wheels. It does something. They haven't finished it yet, but it does. It definitely does something. So thank you again. I'll let you get out of here. But thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me. But one last time, plug your socials, your books, upcoming things. Say, repeat for everybody your name, what you do, and where people can find you, and then everything else. Please tell us about it.
So my name is Carlotta Berry, and I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering and robotics. And you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable. I don't know who else I missed. All at DRCABERRY. You can also visit my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Carlotta Berry. And I do have tutorials and robotics videos for young people, for kids, as well as for adults. And my Black STEM romance novel is called Elevated Inferno, Monet's Moment. Elevated Inferno because she gets stuck in an elevator and rescued by a firefighter. And she's a graduate student in robotics, studying computer science. And so I'm hoping Breaking Point, which is book 2 in the series, will be out in July of 2023.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Dr. Berry, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. You earned that title, and I don't feel comfortable calling you by your first name. So.
I don't let my students do it, but you can, because I've had some students like, you can, but my students cannot. And I will also post on TikTok when the workshops start as well, so that you can see it. We actually have a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon who's already pitched the first workshop of the summer, which is a virtual robot arm where the kids design the robot arm to do something. So I will start posting that as soon as we get it up.
Awesome. And probably around summertime, we'll definitely have to have you back. And so we can talk about it keep it fresh and talk about it right then. Okay. But Dr. Berry, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for listening. I really appreciate you, and you have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning into the Conscious Environment Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. And thanks again to Dr. Carlotta Berry for coming in and hanging out with me. I learned so much about STEM in that interview that I didn't learn before. And it's awesome to see that there is a connection between STEM and sociology. If you want to support the show, there are Cashapp and Venmo links down below, as well as our brand new Patreon. And if you want to get a little bit more bang for your buck, if you sign up for Patreon, there's a promo code that gets you a little bit of a percentage off on all the things on the Bonfire merch site. So anything that's up there, we got a bunch of shirts, hoodies, there's going to be some journals going up there as well. So hopefully you guys go check that out. If you can't support financially, please just tell a friend, tell your mama, and rate us 5 stars on Apple Music or Spotify. And one last thing, remember, I love you, and stay hydrated. Go drink water. Like right now. Go drink water right now. Okay, I'll see you guys next week.